everybody to our webinar today on Predictive People Analytics on behalf of AssetHR. So thank you so much for joining today. So we're just going to kind of go through our agenda for today. So you'll meet your presenters. And then we're just going to go through a couple of slides as far as what is Predictive People Analytics, some examples as far as how it can help your business. And then we're going to go through a demo of what People Predictive Analytics is and what it can do. And then at the very end, we're going to have some Q&A options at the very end. So there are two ways that you can kind of get your questions answered throughout this demo today. Is there's a chat feature and there's also a Q&A feature within the WebEx. So as you have questions as we're going through this demo today, please don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat feature or the Q&A feature. And then at the very end, we'll have some time to make sure that we get those questions answered for you. So today you have myself, Amber Renew, on the line, and then you also have Sean with us. He is one of our solutions consultants and kind of knows all, does all for People Predictive Analytics. We're just going to kind of go through as far as a couple things is like what is People Predictive Analytics. So it is a very powerful and sophisticated analytics tool for you to utilize within your company. You can incorporate some, key people and data sources as far as how to utilize the analytics tool. There is, some nice dashboards in there. It is very easy for you to use. You can import data, and then, of course, the data that's in there you can analyze, and, it's easy to use and how to understand what you're analyzing within the analytics tool itself. And then we just have a couple of use case examples that we like to just kind of share with you as far as, how Predictive People Analytics has helped businesses. So you can see, obviously, it improves employee retention. And we'll kind of show you that as far as how that can, help you retain, employees using some of the, predictive modelings, things that will kind of help you identify some turnovers, identifying risks, what's putting, people at risk, how to reduce the risk. So there's definitely some really good features in there as far as improving your employee retention. And then, it will save you some valuable time. There is actually a virtual assistant that Sean will show you today that's in People Predictive Analytics. It's actually pretty cool, I think. I think you'll really like that virtual assistant that's within People Predictive Analytics. And then it'll also increase your DEI and B efforts. So, easy to access some of the data and then identifying some higher biases and then even some like pay inequities, things like that you can, kind of track and figure out if you have gaps and how to stay on track and things like that. So there's just some really nice use case examples as far as, what People Predictive Analytics can do for your business. At this time, I will turn the reins over to Sean, and then Sean's going to show you guys that demo as far as how does People Predictive Analytics work. And then, like I said, if you have questions, please make sure you put your questions in the Q&A or in the chat so that we can get to all of your questions at the end of the demo.
Great, thanks, Amber, and welcome everyone. Amber, if you can turn on my ability to share my screen. Or make me presenter or whatever you got to do there.
Yep. Absolutely.
Otherwise, we can all use the theater of our minds. I don't know how well that would work. All right, there we go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. And actually, what you see in just a moment is that I've logged into iSolved at proper, right? I've logged into iSolved as more of an admin. And I really just wanted to point out the fact that when PPA or Predictive People Analytics is turned on or enabled for you, it really gets added to your toolkit of reporting capabilities. So you can see once it's turned on, I can access through reporting the PPA or Predictive People Analytics, which I already have up and running. So now what we're looking at is what that part of the iSolved platform looks like when enabled. Pardon me. First and foremost, it is a collection of dashlets, or metrics on various dashboards that you can set up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see, pardon me, I have a number of dashboards and the ability to create a new dashboard. And from that, I can add the different metrics or dashlets from my metrics library. So we supply all of this to you with the solution, so you can start creating your own dashboards, including the metrics from the metrics library that you're wanting to include in those various dashboards. And then from there, you can really slice and dice, and you can do the predictive analytics and so forth. That we'll look at in just a moment, some examples. But before we do, I wanted to move over to the far right and point out a few things. First off, I can filter um, this dashboard. So in other words, all of these metrics that you see here, I can filter kind of globally. I can also email this information out to other individuals. I can download the dashboard so that it downloads as like a .png file or an image file that can be incorporated in PowerPoints. I can copy the dashboard, and I have other ways to share the dashboard with other users. So it's something that can be made available to folks who have access to PPA, as well as those who do not have access to PPA. So I wanted to make sure I shared that with you all. Now, that said, as we're looking at this particular example, which is my workforce overview dashboard, where I've got information on number of employees, I've got information on average age, so some demographic information. I've got turnover information as well. Um, right now I'm looking at all of this for the last 30 days. So what I can do is I can very easily do a kind of a point in time. So if I want to see what these dashboards or these metrics look like last April or April of this year, I can choose different points in time to view that detail and see how it slightly varies as I do that. So it allows you to kind of globally make changes to the information. And I apologize, but for some reason I'm having some kind of allergy attack, so bear with me. All right, sorry about that. Now, what we're going to see when I drill into any one of these, I keep calling them dashlets because someone shared with me that that's the proper term. But these metrics that we see here, such as number of employees, want to point out a few things. I can interact with each of these as well. So we saw how I could globally view all of this information as kind of a point in time, as well as the last 30 days of information. But as I'm looking at, let's say, number of employees, first off, I have my little information bubble so I can see what is this particular dashlet all about, right? So you can provide that kind of insight. So when someone's looking at this for the first time, they can easily see what the information relates to. Also, I have my ellipses here, or my there's a like hamburger buns or something meatball button there, whatever it's being referred to today. I call it ellipses. I can do things like remove this from the dashboard. I can add it to another dashboard. I can also set alerts. And this can be very powerful because they can be alerts based upon hitting a threshold or on a periodic basis getting alerted, and it's via email. So if I want to receive an alert, let's say over 1,000 employees, when I hit over 1,000 employees, so in other words, a threshold-based alert, I can say notify me when the total exceeds 1,000. And then I can save this. Or I can set a periodic alert. Maybe I change the name to be more around a periodic alert. And I say, tell me what the total is the start of each week, or custom, or start of the month, start of the quarter. So you can not only be tracking all of this information, but you can also be setting alerts that will send you email notifications based upon those parameters. And that way you can then access PPA or Cloud People Analytics and see the details. Now, that's as it relates, what options I had as it relates to this particular dashlet, number of employees. If I go out down here to average age, look at that information. It's really tiny. Basically, this metric shows a distribution of your organization's in percentage. An employee belongs to one age group only. So that's a little bit of information on that. Probably couldn't read it when it popped up, but I have some additional options here. So I can set alerts. I can download this particular dashlet as a chart. I can copy it. I can add it to another dashboard. I can remove it, of course. I can share it, but I can also change the graphic. So based upon the type of information being portrayed or displayed, I have options. So anything that's grayed out means that this particular type of information can't be displayed as an area or heat map, but it can be a bar chart instead of a pie chart. So I can easily change how I'm displaying that information. So there's that feature when it comes to these various metrics and dashlets, if you will. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention to you before we drill in any further, and I'm going to go back to my number of employees, is that based upon the type of information, I could have the ability to drill down and kind of slice and dice, which we'll take a look at. I might furthermore have the ability to analyze or do some additional analytics on that data. And if applicable, I can even get into the predictive modeling that Amber was talking about. So not every one of these has that modeling associated to it. But for those that do, like number of employees and turnover by year and so forth, predictive analytics is very powerful. And we'll look at an example of that in a moment. But before we get there, I'm going to go ahead and drill down into this number of employees metric. And we see that I have a total of 941 employees. Well, what if I want to see how that breaks out by gender? Well, I can change the chart view. I can also, again, based upon the type of data being presented, change the vertical axis to either a number, a value, or a percentage. So I have 100% employees of my 941. So that wasn't very exciting. But when I start to change the chart view, so let's say I want to include gender. Now, if I'm doing this the right way, now I can see that I've got 37% male and 59.4% female and 3.2% who have selected non-binary. So percentage becomes a little more applicable as we kind of drill down. So I can easily start to layer on this chart view and kind of slice and dice. So I want to look at gender. Maybe I also want to look at ethnicity. So now I'm looking at gender by ethnicity, total number of employees or by percentage. So hopefully you're starting to see how you can leverage this to quickly get an answers to information, quickly kind of slice and dice the information at your disposal. And this is, by the way, information that's all pulling from iSolved, right? There's a lot of great detail. It's aggregating that information. It's allowing you to analyze it and so forth, slice and dice the information like we see here. But wait, there's more. So here I'm looking at a chart view of gender and ethnicity in my organization as far as total number of employees. If I go over here to my settings, I have additional filter options. So let's say I want to see this same chart view, but I want to see it where it's just for the commercial banking department. So I can start to apply different filters to what I'm looking at. And when I do that, you can see how that adjusted the numbers, at least graphically, how the graph adjusted. So now I'm starting to get into some additional options for slicing and dicing. And based upon the chart that you're looking at, the dashlet, if you will, I might have some additional settings available to me. So for example, I might have the ability to apply some benchmarking. And these are, this is information that's being supplied in or brought into iSolve to allow for this benchmarking to happen. Let's see if I pick this one. Yeah, there we go. So I picked a particular benchmark, and now I can see same information by gender, by ethnicity. I think I still have my filter option, so just for commercial banking, but now I've applied this benchmarking, which shows me how do we stack up against benchmarks that are out there in the marketplace, right? as far as it relates to the employees' ethnicity and gender. So some really powerful things that you can apply to get answers and to help really guide your business decisions. Um, but we haven't even really gotten into some of the other features such as analytics and predictive analytics. So if I go into analytics, what that does now is it takes that, well, actually, let me back up because I almost missed a point here. So I can also apply this or modify this information I'm looking at like I did for the whole dashboard. I can do it or apply it as it relates to this particular metric over time. When I get into analytics, I want you to notice what happens to that option in the upper right-hand corner, because now what we're looking at is we're looking at it over time. We're looking at our number of employees over time, first and foremost. And again, I can apply different chart views and see how that applies to things. But I also now have the ability to modify what I'm looking at from a timeline perspective. Right now it's at a rolling 12 months, but I could look at this over 3 calendar years. Pardon me. And when I'm looking at this, if I want to alter how I'm looking at this, I can go to my settings, and now I have the ability to do things like group by year, right? Or apply a regression analysis, which I'm not a statistics person, and we don't want to talk about my experience with statistics class in college, but you have that capability for those of you who are more so statisticians than I am. You understand the value of being able to apply a regression analysis. You can also compare month to month. I mean, there's some really great things you can do with this solution. It's all at your fingertips, and it's all leveraging the information contained already within iSolved. So it's really taking that reporting capability to the next level. So I'm going to stop playing with this particular metric. And one other thing I wanted to mention. So we're talking about number of employees, which means we're talking about employee records at the end of the day. So here I'm looking at this trend of number of employees over the last 3 years. I've applied my regression analysis line, and I've done some other things with the settings. Well, down below, I'm actually seeing those records that this information applies to. And what can be very useful about that is that if I'm looking at my number of employees, and let's say I'm wanting to make some decisions um, around promoting some employees. So let me actually go back to my dashboard here. Let's say I'm looking at I'm looking at revenue per employee, or I'm looking at turnover. So we'll go into the analytics for turnover, because that's where I was going to go next anyway. So here we see turnover over time, and we see that trending upwards, and then kind of starts going back down. Well, here are the people records that can relate to. And so if I'm looking at turnover and I'm saying, I want to look at some specific employees and compare and contrast those employees as it relates to reducing turnover, or maybe I'm trying to determine if there's someone I want to promote or that kind of thing. The bottom line is that um, I can compare those individuals and view the details, and even add additional details to this view. And I, of course, export it as well. So turnover, maybe not the best use case, but if you're looking at employees and you're trying to determine from your list of employees, who might be promotable, who you might want to give a raise to, or whatever the case might be, you have these insights. The ability to drill into these insights is really the long story made short. All right, so let me go back to my dashboard and go back to my analytics view of turnover. So this is where we're going to talk a little bit about predictive analytics. And as I mentioned, there are some metrics that we don't have modeling in place for today, or it's just by the very nature of the data you're looking at. It doesn't lend itself to predictive modeling, or even trending over time. So it really, again, boils down to the information you're looking at. But in this case, with turnover, this particular metric, we have predictive capabilities. And what that basically means is I can look at the trend over the past 6 months and then have the system through modeling predict what that's going to look like over the next 6 months. And yes, I can interact with this, right? I can apply different chart views. I can change the vertical axis from values to percentage. I can, apply different filtering and different settings. But I also now have the ability, the third option here, as it relates to predictive analysis, which, based upon the modeling, based upon the data that it's looking at, the aggregation of that data, it's identifying, the system is identifying what might be causing, what might be at the root cause of this turnover trend, and what might cause future turnover. And you can see it's identified average salary as being a high reason for turnover. But then there's some other options or variables as well, such as average age, commute distance, tenure, and percentage of remote employees, though that's very low as far as being a potential for causing the turnover, if you will. So it really is providing quite a bit of insight. Now that said, if I collapse that, what I can also do with this, with the predictive piece, is I can actually impact the modeling. So we talked about the individual employee records that this is based on, and how we can drill into that and kind of compare and contrast different employees and different data points. But we also have this summary tab here, and that's where we can start the modeling process. So based upon the predictive model, how it's been designed, so in this example, I can actually model against average salary, average commute distance, and remote employee percentage, which means I can play with the numbers. I can say, hey, what of these variables, what kinds of changes could be made that could positively impact this? In other words, bring turnover rate down. And so maybe we're thinking, hey, it might be helpful if we gave everyone in the organization a 10% raise. And when we do that, and I hit enter, do that again, we see, hopefully you caught that, how it reduced the potential turnover. Okay, great. We might be onto something here. What if we give everyone a 20% bump up in raise? What does that do potentially? Oh, it brings it down even further. That's awesome. Well, is it though? Do we really want to be giving 20% raise to every single person in the organization? It may not be a very wise business decision. So what else could we be looking at? Well, instead of giving raises, maybe we want to look at allowing more people to work remotely. Right now, we've got 71% of the workforce working remotely, which is quite a bit. But let's say we bump that up by 10%. It kind of looks like it has a very similar effect to giving everyone a 10% raise. But that might be a lot easier for executive leadership to get on board with, to let more people work from home. And of course, the whole intent of this is to give you insights so that you can start to explore additional options. But they're insights that you didn't have before. And they're insights that come from the information you already have at your disposal. We're just simply applying modeling to it. So hopefully you're seeing in this example somewhat, some of it a little bit, silly perhaps, because again, giving everyone a 20% raise would be great if that could be something, for the employees. They'd love that. But realistically, it's probably not great for the bottom line of your organization. But there could be other things you could do. And so this allows you to kind of identify what those could be and then start to explore how realistic it would be to allow 20% more or 85% of your employees to work from home versus 71%. So let me stop there. And I guess let me see, Amber, were there any questions that came through while I was going through this part of the demo?
No, not. No, I don't have any questions as of right now.
Okay, thank you. So there are a couple other things I wanted to show you. That was a little bit on the predictive. We talked a little bit about the analytics and the ability to kind of drill down and slice and dice. I'm going to go back to my workforce, pardon me, overview dashboard. And, we can see all the different dashlets. Well, the other thing I failed to mention, so I'm going to kind of take a step back, is that this is really easy to interact with. What I mean by that is let's say I'm looking at this and I say, you know what, I don't like the way this is laid out. I want to move some things around. I can simply drag and drop to do just that. I can easily drag and make something bigger. So it makes it very, very easy for you to manipulate the look and feel of these dashboards. Just gotta make sure I make it the right size, like that, right? You get the idea, right? So there's that capability as well. But what I wanted to say is that um, in addition to all the capabilities we've explored so far, and specifically as it relates to the slicing and dicing and the applying of various chart views and filters, I can make that even easier on myself through what we call NLP, or natural language processing, which I don't think is something we here at iSolved invented that term. I think that's just what it's called. But you have that with with tools like Siri and Alexis and so forth. Well, we have our own virtual assistant. We actually have a female and a male version, so you can set up who you want. You can also call them whatever you want. I think our female is called Monica. I think this male version is called Simon. But there's a couple different ways I can use that NLP capability to get answers. So first off, I can just type it in up here in the search field. I can search with natural language. I can say, how many female vice presidents do we have? And when I hit enter, it's going to scour the information and it's going to present to me an answer to that question. We have 14 total female vice presidents in our organization, my fictional organization. Now, we were having some issues with our friend here, and I will go with his name is Simon. We'll see here. Simon, how many female vice presidents do I have in my organization? Now, unfortunately, you won't, because it's going through my headset, you won't hear Simon answer the question. But he comes back and responds accordingly. And you saw him kind of talk there. So, Simon, how many employees do I have in my company? And then he comes back with, yeah, he was still listening to me. So, but he got the answer right, 941. So unfortunately, because it's coming through my headphones, you're not hearing him respond with with his voice, but it's just like any virtual assistant like Siri or Alexa, etc. They're going to respond based upon the questions that you ask. So, and this, by the way, is all mobile optimized, so you can pull this information up on your phone as well, or your tablet. But that was a little bit on the NLP capability, both what I type when I ask a question that way, or when I use the virtual assistant, whether it be female or male or whatever name you name it, because you have that capability to configure it accordingly. You can get those answers very quickly. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I can share with you all for today's demonstration. I think I did throw a lot at you, but hopefully it was in such a way that it didn't overwhelm you all with the information I shared, and it all made sense. But certainly, if there are any questions that you have, anyone out there, please put them out in chat or in the Q&A, and we'll address them straight away. Or if worst case, do some research and get back to you all. Any questions, Amber?
I have not seen any come through the chat or the Q&A at this time.
All right, thank you. So that means one of two things, Amber. It means I've done a phenomenal job, or everyone's asleep. So I'm going to go with
I'm gonna go with
former.
phenomenal job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I'm gonna go with phenomenal job. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions that anybody has for us today. So at this time, we will thank you all for joining our webinar on People Predictive Analytics, and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, Amber. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.